30 days. That is all military analysts say it would take for a direct war between the United States and Iran to fundamentally reshape the Middle East, global oil markets, and the balance of power in ways that would affect every single person watching this video right now. Not in 10 years, not eventually, within 1 month. And the question that most cable news channels are not asking clearly enough is not whether America could win militarily. The answer to that is almost certainly yes. The real question is what winning actually costs, and whether the country that comes out of 30 days of war looking strongest is the one that fired the first missile. Because here is what the history books and the strategy papers and the classified briefings all quietly agree on. In modern conflicts, military dominance and strategic victory are two completely different things, and the United States has learned that lesson before, more than once. So stay with me here, because by the end of this video, you are going to understand something that most political commentators are dancing around, who actually benefits from a US-Iran war, and the answer is going to surprise you. Right now, the tension between Washington and Tehran is at one of its most dangerous points in decades. The nuclear file is stalled, American forces in the region are on elevated alert, Iran-backed groups have carried out strikes on US positions across Iraq and Syria, and both governments have exchanged language that, if you follow this region closely, sounds less like diplomacy and more like the final arguments before a decision gets made. This is not background noise. Senior officials in multiple governments are treating this as a live scenario, and that matters because the gap between a limited strike and a full regional war is much smaller than most people think. One miscalculation, one vessel in the wrong place, one retaliation that goes further than intended, and the entire situation crosses a line that cannot be uncrossed. So what does the actual picture look like if it happens? Let us start with the military reality because the facts here are genuinely important to understand. The United States military is, without question, the most powerful fighting force on the planet. The gap between American capabilities and Iranian capabilities in terms of air power, naval power, precision weapons, and satellite intelligence is enormous. If Washington decided to conduct a full military campaign against Iran, the Iranian conventional military would not last 30 days. American airstrikes could destroy Iranian radar systems, missile batteries, air defense networks, naval assets, and military command infrastructure with a level of precision and speed that Iran simply cannot match. Iran has no aircraft carrier. Its Air Force flies planes that are decades old. Its Navy, while significant in the Persian Gulf, would face a U.S. naval force that outclasses it in almost every measurable way. So on paper, if this were a boxing match between two fighters based purely on size and strength, the outcome would not be a close contest. But here is the part almost nobody is talking about. Iran has spent 30 years preparing for exactly this scenario, and their strategy was never to beat the United States in a conventional fight. Their strategy was to make winning so expensive, so regionally destabilizing, and so economically damaging that the cost of the conflict outweighs whatever military objective was achieved. In the first place, this is the doctrine that military planners call asymmetric warfare, and Iran has built one of the most sophisticated asymmetric networks in the world. Let us go through what that actually means in practical terms. Iran has spent decades building a network of allied and proxy forces across the region that do not fight like traditional armies. Hezbollah in Lebanon has over 150,000 rockets and missiles pointed at Israel. The Houthis in Yemen have demonstrated repeatedly that they can strike oil infrastructure and commercial shipping. Across a wide geographic area, militias in Iraq have repeatedly targeted American bases, and all of these groups operate with enough independence that Iran can maintain plausible distance while the pressure campaign continues. The moment a US-Iran war begins, the assumption among most serious analysts is that all of these networks activate simultaneously, not as a coordinated single strike but as a sustained, multi-front pressure campaign designed to stretch American and Allied resources across as many battlefields as possible at the same time. Israel gets drawn in almost immediately. Saudi Arabia and the Gulf states become targets. International shipping through the Strait of Hormuz, which carries roughly 20% of the world's oil supply, gets disrupted almost from day one. Iran does not need to close the strait entirely to cause an economic crisis. It only needs to make it dangerous enough that insurance costs spike, tankers reroute, and oil markets panic, which they will. The International Energy Agency has estimated that a serious disruption in Hormuz oil flow could push global oil prices to levels not seen since the worst energy crises in modern history, and that does not stay in the Middle East. That shows up at every gas station in America, in every household's heating bill, in every product that gets shipped by truck or plane. Inflation, which is already a politically sensitive issue for any sitting administration, gets significantly worse. Now this is where the story takes an unexpected turn. Because when you run the 30-day scenario all the way through, a picture emerges that nobody in the pro-war conversation wants to acknowledge openly. The countries that gain the most from a prolonged US-Iran conflict are not the United States, they are Russia and China. Think about what this conflict would do for Moscow. Russia is currently under significant economic and diplomatic pressure over Ukraine. A major war in the Middle East pulls American attention, resources, and political capital in a completely different direction. European allies who are already stretched thin between supporting Ukraine and managing their own economic pressures now have to deal with an energy crisis on top of everything else. Russian oil, which is already finding buyers despite Western sanctions, becomes even more valuable when Gulf supply is disrupted. Every week that American focus is on Iran is a week that reduces the pressure on Russia in Ukraine. For China, the calculation is similarly clear. Beijing watches every American military commitment as information about what capacity the United States has left to respond to Taiwan. A U.S. military engaged in a major Middle East conflict, dealing with casualties, political blowback at home, and a strained defense budget is a U.S. military that is more constrained in the Pacific. China does not need to fire a single shot to benefit from this scenario. It simply needs to wait and watch, and what happened next changed the entire calculation. Because in recent months, both Russia and China have deepened their economic and strategic relationships with Iran in ways that directly affect how this potential war would unfold. China continues to purchase Iranian oil in significant volumes despite American sanctions, providing Tehran with economic oxygen that keeps the government functioning. Russia and Iran have expanded military cooperation, with weapons technology and tactical experience flowing in both directions. These are not coincidences. These are deliberate moves by two major powers who understand that a weakened and distracted United States serves their strategic interests. So now let us bring this together and look at the actual 30-day outcome. In the first week of a direct conflict, the United States conducts massive airstrikes on Iranian military infrastructure. Iranian nuclear sites take significant damage. The Iranian air defense network is largely destroyed. Iranian naval assets in the Gulf take serious losses. By pure military measurement, the United States is winning decisively. But by day 8 or 9, the secondary effects begin. Oil prices have already jumped significantly on news of the conflict alone. By week 2, Hezbollah has launched large-scale rocket and missile attacks on Israel. Israeli cities are under a level of pressure not seen in modern times. Israel responds. The war has now expanded beyond US-Iran into a broader regional conflict. U.S. military bases in Iraq are under sustained attack. American casualties begin. The political conversation in Washington shifts from military objectives to exit strategy. The American public, which has consistently told pollsters for years that it does not want another major land war in the Middle East, begins putting enormous pressure on Congress. The administration that started the conflict is now managing the communications battle at home while fighting a kinetic battle abroad. By week 3, global oil markets are in serious disruption. Allied governments in Europe are calling for restraint. The United Nations Security Council is paralyzed because Russia and China block any meaningful resolution. Iran's government, despite taking severe military losses, is using the conflict for internal political purposes, rallying national sentiment around the idea of resistance against foreign attack, which is exactly the narrative authoritarian governments use to survive military pressure and consolidate power. And here is where the 30-day picture becomes genuinely important for Americans to understand. By day 30, the United States has clearly won the military exchange. Iranian military capability has been severely degraded, but Iran is still standing, its government is still functioning, its proxy network is still active. The region is more unstable than it was 30 days earlier. Oil prices are significantly higher. America has new casualties, new costs, and a new long-term commitment it did not have before. And the two countries that benefit most from all of this never fired a single shot. This is the answer to the original question: who really wins in 30 days? Not the United States, not Iran. The winners are the countries that watch from the sidelines while two adversaries bleed each other and the global economy absorbs the shock. That does not mean military force is never appropriate. American credibility in the region is a real factor. Iranian nuclear progress is a genuine threat that serious people in both political parties take seriously. The argument for preventing a nuclear-armed Iran is not a trivial one. But there is an enormous difference between a targeted operation with limited and clearly defined objectives and a full military conflict with no clear end state. The history of the last 2 decades in this region shows repeatedly that the distance between those two things is much harder to control than it looks at the start. The smartest version of American foreign policy in this moment is one that keeps maximum pressure on Iran through sanctions, diplomacy, and deterrence, while making the cost of escalation on Iran's side as high as possible without handing Moscow and Beijing the strategic gift of a distracted and overextended United States. Whether the current political environment in Washington allows for that kind of patience and strategic discipline is honestly one of the most important questions in American foreign policy right now. And it is a question worth paying very close attention to in the months ahead. If you found this analysis useful, here is what I want you to do. Subscribe to this channel if you are not already. We publish independent political analysis without the noise and without the agenda. Hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a video. Drop a comment below with one question. Specifically, I want to know this: do you think the United States has a clear strategic goal when it comes to Iran, or is this being driven by short-term political pressures? Tell me what you actually think. I read every comment, and if you know someone who follows geopolitics or is trying to understand what is really happening in this region, share this video with them directly, not the algorithm, because independent analysis only reaches people when real viewers decide it is worth passing on. The next video goes deeper into what Iran's nuclear timeline actually looks like and what a deal would need to contain to be taken seriously. That one is worth watching back to back with this one. Thank you for watching the whole thing, it genuinely matters.